Hello and welcome back to the Friday Five for February 10th, 2023. My name is Andrew Ayers. I'm an estate planning and business law attorney with offices in Edina, Minnesota and New York City. And we're going to take a quick look at 5 questions that came up this week in consultations and meetings with clients. They'll be short questions with short answers, and maybe you've had this question before and it'll give you an idea of where to get started. So question number 1, if I move, do I have to update my will? And this is all going to depend upon what's in your will. So if you own one piece of property, just the house you live in with your spouse, and your will says that everything I have at the time of my death goes to my spouse, then you probably don't need to update your will if you move to another house. However, the other way we can deal with these is if we own a house at 123 Main Street and we have a specific distribution on our will that says 123 Main Street goes to my cousin Jane. In that case, if you sell 123 Main Street and you no longer own it, you move somewhere else, in that case, you will want to update your will, because what happens is that distribution of 123 Main Street has addemed. It's a doctrine called ademption, which means if that property is no longer owned by you at the time of your death, we can't fulfill that gift that was under your will. Question number 2 this week. Why does my will get shorter if I use a trust instead of a will? So this question came to me because a client had a will from a few years ago that actually had a trust built into it. So they have children under the age of 18 and they have provisions for a trust to set up in case something happens to both of them. We have guardianship provisions and a trustee to manage property for the children. At this point, the client has chosen to move from just that will-based plan to actually set up a revocable living trust. At this time, we have some assets we want to move in while both parties are still alive. And so the client's question was, my will was a lot longer before, now that I'm doing the trust, why is it shorter? The simple answer is because all of those trust provisions that were in your old will have now been moved to the trust document itself. We don't need them in the will anymore because they'll be taken care of in the trust. There may be some issues that are addressed in both your will and your trust, but as a general principle, we don't want things to be repeated because in case there's a conflict, you could be leaving some kind of a fight between your heirs as to figure out which document should be controlling. So in that case, the reason your will is a little bit shorter is because those provisions have been moved from your will over to your trust. Question number 3 this week, our will was drafted in 2005, should it be updated? Now, this was an interesting situation because the clients drafted their wills in 2005, but they have no children, and not a lot of things have changed in the last 17, 18 years since they had their wills drafted. They live in the same house. The people they want to be, the powers of attorney are the same. So everything is really in the same place it was in 2005. Which is rather atypical. So most clients I will meet with, if you have a will that was drafted in 2005, we've had some changes. We've had children, we've had divorces, we've had deaths, we've had grandchildren. There can be a lot of things that happen over the course of 18 years. But in this case, with a will from 2005, where nothing's really changed, there wasn't actually the need to update the will, but it was still a good idea to review it and make sure that everything was in the will that they wanted to have. So this is a good example for you that just because your will is old, even if it's from the 1900s, doesn't mean it's not valid. It may need to be updated, but if you never update it, as long as that will is valid from when you signed it, that would be the will that controls when you die. Question number 4 this week, moving over into the business world, and that's in a litigation, can my court records be sealed after the case is over? So in this case, we had a litigation where my small business client, as part of discovery, had turned over some customer records. And we wanted to make sure that those records stayed sealed and that there was nothing public about what was in the records. There were also some other filings in the case that our client wanted to make sure were not public because others in the industry could use it against them in the future. And so the short answer is yes, your court records can be sealed after a case is over or even while the case is going on. Make sure you talk to your attorney and they can make the appropriate application to your judge, to the court, whoever's hearing the case about sealing those records so it's not all out there for public consumption. Question number 5 this week, can I prepare the dissolution paperwork myself for my company? So the short answer to this, like most legal documents, is yes, you can prepare that paperwork. However, is it really a good idea? When you're dissolving a company, it's important that you make sure to follow the formalities that are required. Because if you don't correctly dissolve your company, you may be leaving yourself open to liability down the road. A properly dissolved company closes off claims for creditors, sets a date the company was closed, and puts an end to the life cycle, if you will, of that business. However, if you don't do it correctly, you can leave that company open accidentally, and down the road a lawsuit may arise that you wouldn't have had to defend against if you had properly closed the company. However, since you haven't properly dissolved the company, that lawsuit is able to continue, and the court's going to be able to address the issues, and you may even find yourself to be personally liable for these things. So we want to make sure that we are properly dissolving our corporation. Can you do it yourself? Of course you can. The question is, should you do it? So those were 5 questions from the week of February 10th, 2023. I hope you found these interesting. Maybe you had one of these questions yourself. If you like this video, there's a link in the description where you can ask questions for future episodes. I actually have had a few people write in with questions. And if you found it helpful, hit the like button. You can go over to the YouTube channel and subscribe on YouTube. And wherever you are, I hope you have a wonderful weekend. It's a little chilly here in Minnesota, but we're hoping that warm up and that thaw is coming soon.